Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Kick It Podcast coming to you live from Oceanside. Today is Wednesday. As always, we're here. I'm here with Victor, Bruce, and our special guest, Corinna Contreras.
What's up?
How you doing?
It's a good day.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Well, I'm glad you were able to actually find your way out here because the direction sent you on a on a goose chase.
Yeah. No, it was good. I got to give you guys a call and you sent me straight. So now I'm here. I made it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. For those that don't know, Ms. Contreras is Vista City Council Member for District 1.
That's
So
right.
before we get into all that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background?
Yeah, sure. Uh, you know, Basically born and raised in Vista. Been in Vista my whole life with a quick stint in Santa Barbara. So I was in Santa Barbara for school. After my 4 years, came back home and I studied film and media studies and sociology in Santa Barbara. I actually started getting really into media in high school. And, but when I finished school, I came back and I just was like, corporate tunnel, right? Vision. I just started,
It happens to the best of us.
right? I just started working and like, right, and like finance and stuff like that. And it kind of sucks because you start working all the time and then you're not in the community. And I grew up doing like a lot of community service, right? So in 2015, I started feeling like really antsy and I decided to look at agriculture. So I grew up on my grandparents' nursery in Vista from the Ariano family. So they had Ariano's nursery. And, as long as me and my brother and my cousins like stayed out of the way of the customers, we could run around everywhere, like make little forts. But I've always been interested in plants. So I love plants. And I was like, hey, I started Googling and then found like this permaculture certification course. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. I went and I did it, and it was really transformational because I got to connect with other people here in San Diego County that were just looking at the world in a different way. And it took me out of like the tunnel vision that I had. And I was like, you know what? If I continue down this path of just like working for this corporation, right? What's my next job? Working for a corporation, that kind of stuff, and not really following my passion or invigorating my spirit with stuff that I like to do. I mean, is that really like living life? So I decided to talk to my grandparents. They still had this land, right? They had been retired basically for a while, and I was like, hey, like, let me talk to you about permaculture.
I got business proposition
Right,
for
like
you.
what about some experimental like community farming endeavor, right? And so um while I was doing that, I still had to work. So I was able to I quit my job that I had for, I was going on like 5 years there.
Wow.
And I go bye to that and start kind of looking at, hey, what can I do right in agriculture and sustainable agriculture? And there was
Bless you.
one, bless you,
Excuse me.
bless
Thank
you.
you. Salute.
And so I'm like, okay, so this piece of property is like here. There's a municipal code. It tells me I can have like 25 small animals. A chicken is considered a small animal, but like a turkey is considered like two chickens. And I was like, who's making this stuff up, right? So,
I mean, that kind of makes sense though. Like a turkey is like two chickens, basically.
right, right. It's a little bit bigger than a chicken, right? And then it's like you can only have like one cow on like X amount, right? But you can have like a horse per every half acre. And I was like, okay, so I'm like kind of like starting to see this municipal code for the first time. And then 2016 happened, and that was like a whole shock for the nation. And I'd always been like following politics like at this like national level, right,
Hmm.
top level. And theoretically I knew like here in the city and the county like there was like local government, but I never paid attention to it. And I went to my first council meeting in Vista January 2017, and I was like, man, I spent like $35,000 to get my bachelor's degree, and I can't even vote in my own backyard, right? Like, I'm voting for people that are really not reflecting my values and are not reflecting the values of the community that I'm in,
Hell yeah.
right?
There you go.
And then I just started going to every, like literally every council meeting, and I always had something to say. I would sit in the front, and I could just tell, like, I could see these people sitting up there, right? And this, like, beautiful, I'd never been into the Civic Center in Vista, and it's just, like, so opulent.
It's a big old building right
Dude,
there.
it's
People don't even fucking
huge.
notice. Like, they drive right by there almost every day when you're going off of Sycamore.
It's freaking huge, and the stuff that goes on there is so important, right?
Mhm.
So I, like, walk in, and it almost feels like you're going into, like, a court. Right? It's like, you go, the chambers are on the second floor. Like, I just remember my first time, right? This is like January 2017. I'm like going through the doors. There's like Vista sheriffs right here, right, guarding the
Mhm.
entrance, and then like people sitting up here, and then the audience right here, right? And it was a game changer, right? I started talking about, like, I had always thought that my city was poor. And so I guess, like, I just excused some of the
Negligence.
right, like, my parts of the community were really being neglected for such a long time. And like, I grew up on Foothill, right, on one side of Vista,
Mm.
and I live on another side now. I live off North Santa Fe, right, in Indian Rock. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. It looks like there's like this downtown area that's getting like reinvigorated, right?
Mhm.
And so I was asking, like, hey, where are the shelters for like people waiting for the bus? Because like on North Santa Fe, like there's like tons of people that walk, right? Not because they like need exercise, but because that's their mode of transportation,
Mhm.
right? They're there waiting for the bus, right? And I like literally still to this day, like this is one of the things that needs to change, and why like having a political majority really makes a big difference, and we're like kind of moving in that direction. But there'll be like a light pole, and it'll give a little bit of shade depending on where the sun is hitting it, right? And so you'll see people like on their phone, like trying to like be in that shade. And I'm like, we have no trees over here, right? Like, what's going on? And then I would start asking people that were supposed to represent us, like, hey, like, what about this? What about that? And they're like, the first thing is like, we don't have money.
The fuck?
Yeah. I'm like,
didn't we just like renovate some other buildings? What was that other
Right,
project
right.
last
They
month?
sold a
type
piece of some
thing.
land in downtown, like the parking structures and whatnot.
So it's just like, you know, what do you mean we don't have money? And then I
Mhm.
started like reading the document. So this is one of the things, is like, there's like these agenda reports, right, for city council meetings. And I would start reading those, and I got hooked. And some of the stuff is like really boring. Right? Some of the
Mhm.
other stuff, it's like kind of exciting. But in the boring stuff, right, is like the budget and like different things that they're allocating. And so like people would tell me like, oh, we don't have money. Like, I was like, we have $21 million in our reserve, and we have a city goal to grow that to 35% reserve. So like, at what point, are you saving money in the bank at the expense of not investing in the community? Right. And so, I saw the downtown getting redone. We got all these breweries, and I just wasn't going to accept that as an answer, right? It's not
Yeah.
a good answer. And that's not an answer that I give too. Like, that's the most, like, to me, when you go to an elected official and you have a grievance and you tell them like, hey, you know what, like X, Y, and Z, and they're like, no, right? Like, that's the first thing that they say back to you is like, no, we don't have money. Like, that's not how I try to play it, because I've been on the other side. I'm still there. I do a trash walk every Wednesday,
And I see
like,
that on your post too, on your
yeah,
story
it's
and
like,
whatnot. Mhm.
and it's like a good way to keep talking to the community, because like my job is to represent the community. It's not to just like, oh, you know what, thanks for electing me, like I'm going to use the money however I want. It's like, no, this needs to be a community process. So anyways, that's, you know, the beginning of the journey, was just going into this place and like seeing that the people up there, they weren't expressing the grievances that my neighbors had. right, that I had, like seeing the moms in their strollers, like having a 4x4 basically on like the side of the road because there's no
There's no parking space.
sidewalks.
There's no
There's
sidewalks,
no
something like that. Like,
sidewalks, right? It's like,
mhm,
that's public safety too, right? And
mhm.
like people always just want to talk about public safety as being like sheriff deputies,
Yeah, crime,
right?
gangs.
And then you
Right.
have like
whatnot.
the kids going to school and they're right there on the rugged trails and the cars are
Right.
just passing by every day. Like, where's the safety in that?
Where's the safety? And that's public safety too, right? So, it's not fair to our community to just say, hey, you know what, we're going to be doing like a remodel here in this part of the city and you're just going to have to wait your turn. It's like, no, we actually all pay taxes. We all deserve equitable representation,
Yep.
right?
Basically,
So,
everybody in the city of Vista, the residency, made that happen with their
Right.
tax-paying, hard-working money right there.
Right.
You know,
Right.
in that sense.
right. Oh, no, 100%.
Mhm.
And then what really set me off, so like I started going to council meetings, I was talking, right? And people were like, you should run for office. And I was like, dude, no way. Like there's gonna be someone like way more qualified than me to run. And like no one was stepping up, right? And I was like, man, I guess maybe it's gonna be me. And I wasn't sure. I was still on the fence. And September of 2017 was a game changer for me. That's when I filed my paperwork to just say it's like your intent to run paperwork. Like, yes,
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm gonna be running. But what spurred my change from like being on the fence to saying yes is that we had two unarmed Latinos killed by the same sheriff deputy in less than a year, and we had Sergio Wick and Jonathan Cornell, right? Uh, and there was a march that the family put on and there's maybe like 20 people, right, max there. We started at the food for less parking lot. um as soon as I roll up, I park, I notice that it's like kind of suspicious because I see these unmarked cars. Like, oh
Of course.
man.
Of course.
Right, right. So you
Here
know
it
you,
goes.
you know where it's what's gonna happen, right?
Unmarked.
Unmarked
unmarked.
cars. And I was like,
Yeah.
these cars look really clean. They look like they're
It's too clean
Right.
to be here.
what's going on here? Like this looks a little suspicious, right? Some undercover activity. And then like I get out and I'm talking to people, and then there's a drone on top of us. And if you're familiar with the layout, so Food for Less is like over here, across the street is like a Starbucks, Rubio's, and then up the hill is the courthouse and where the sheriff deputies have like their station.
Yes.
Mhm.
Right. So I was like, okay, this doesn't look good right now, right? So we're talking about what we're gonna do. We were gonna go to the two spots where these individuals were murdered, and it's literally, like the same street. It's called something different on one side versus the other, and it's bisected by Melrose. So we go and we march, and as we start walking, we see this caravan of sheriff deputies, right? About a caravan of like 10 SUVs deep, right? And they start following us. That's not even the whole thing. Then a helicopter is like on top, right? Like up there. I'm like, this is ridiculous. We only got like 20 people.
They really
So-
brought like all
Dude,
all that.
everything.
they brought
Everything.
all the, like, not to say the guns, but just like
And they have
metaphorically speaking.
and
the
they have
guns
no
out.
money. They have no money, but they
Right.
got all these people to make
No,
all
they
that
got
noise.
there's like shit going down somewhere else. Maybe someone else needs help or assistance. Where's all the attention for that? They got another agenda to cover of
Right.
that day and shit.
At the end of the day, it becomes intimidation.
Yeah.
Right, at taxpayer expense. Like even if you don't care about people, it's like that helicopter is expensive,
Mm-hmm.
right? These deputies, they're expensive. Like they're like $277,000 a piece annually. That rate keeps going up, right? Our contract right now is like 27 million. It's gonna be 28 million with the costs going up, and that's really really expensive. But as we're marching, right, like they keep following us, and we're talking about like individuals like Jonathan's, kids, Sergio's kids, right? A tia, abuela, right? People like family members that were left behind, right? So we're wrapping up our little march, and we're heading back to the Food for Less, but we were about maybe like a mile max from there. And all of a sudden, the caravan of SUVs like rolls up and they stop, and they all the deputies come out with their batons, and they segregated our group. So there's a person, they were holding a flag, right? And it was like decorated different, and they separated this person from the rest of the group, and people start freaking out, right? Because there was also a lot of police brutality, not just happening here in the city of Vista, but like nationwide, right? So it was on everybody's radar. So there's a lot of tension in the community. And I straight up called my mom. I was like, Mom, like, this is what's happening right now. Like, if anything happens to me, like, let me give you an eyewitness account, right? And I took pictures, I videoed. It turns out that they like mistaken identity for like a felony warrant for this person's arrest, right? It was like not the right person. So
they say.
so
I never
Right.
trust
Yeah, he
that,
fit the
bro.
description. That's what they're saying.
yeah,
Bro,
exactly.
you already know, like,
exactly.
I used to be living in Vista because of my grandma. My grandma still resides over there, so I already know how it goes down around there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this was happening like right in front of me, right? And so luckily nothing happened, right? But we start going back to Food for Less, and we get there and we're talking as a group, and we're like, this is not okay. This was extreme intimidation. It is not okay. We need to go to city council and speak. So we got together, we organized, and we went to city council. There was a meeting coming up that Tuesday, and I think it was like maybe like August 17th or something like that. And so a bunch of people in the community went and they spoke. So there's this section at the end of council called public comment or oral communications. Yeah. And you can talk about anything you want. You can talk about unicorns. You could talk about, sheriff deputies. You can talk about cannabis.
They sending him out there again.
Yo,
There's a helicopter.
Hold that thought.
that was actually, I think, Camp Pendleton. I just saw 4 choppers fly by, so it's probably some type of training exercise.
You sure it's not Vista sending their helicopters?
Oh, there's another one right
man.
there.
They
Hey,
know
wait,
I'm
can you
here.
kind of close the door, please?
$5
Just a
million
little bit.
helicopter right there flying by.
So the community gets together, and if something's not on the agenda proper, you can bring it up during public comment.
Mhm.
So we decided, hey, everybody that can show up. Just let the Vista City Council know what's going on, right? And different things that we can do in our community to make it better. And so some people have some really good things to say. And so this is the part that really is just like really frustrating. Someone who's a colleague of mine now, because I sit at the same table as him now, right? But before I wasn't in that position. And we all gave our piece. He decides to go on this law and order rant saying like, I'm sure you don't like not want deputies, right? Because like what would happen then and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, we're talking about someone that was face down and has 2 gunshot wounds and was shot surrendering.
Which basically, if like you coming down to training, like to any tactical kind of training, that would be considered overkill.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
The eyewitness, of the home where it happened, like had a totally different account than the sheriff's report.
What was written down. No,
Right.
Of course.
And so the sheriff's report was really similar from Sergio Wick to Jonathan Cornell. It just seemed like they just like scratched out the name and put this, another name on there. And I just couldn't take it anymore. He was just going on forever. And again, I sit in the front, and you're not supposed to yell out, right? But at some point, it's just like
Enough's enough.
Right. It's enough. It's
Sometimes
enough.
you have to.
His family's here. Like, this is enough. You're like re-traumatizing, right? And so I was like, he had his hands up, right? And so my colleague, who now is running for mayor of Vista, he tells me, he goes on, like, he directs his rant towards me. And he's like, you need to teach your community how to respect the sheriffs. And when they tell you to put your hands up, to put your hands up, right? And like just goes on. And I was just like,
Hell no.
What? I yelled out again. He's like, I will have the sheriffs escort you out of here. You had your opportunity to speak. And I was like, fine, then like have them take me out of these chambers, right? So it kind of like calmed down, and I had to leave for a moment because I just had to like recompose myself. So I went out to the lobby, and the council meeting was over. A bunch of people rushed him just to be like, hey, what's going on? Like, this is not okay how you're talking to someone, right? And I went back in, and I went and I shook his hand, and I said, listen, I understand that what I did was wrong. I shouldn't be yelling out from the crowd, but you also need to understand that it's not okay what you did, right? And what happened to these two individuals. So that's when I decided, like, yeah, I'm gonna run for this. I don't know what the heck it means. I had to just like, okay, I got this paperwork. Like, let me start this paperwork, right? And yeah, so that was the beginning of my journey to where I am now. But
that's kind of like a short film.
Yeah, it's something
Right
that
there,
you
bro.
don't expect to be in, and you just
Bruh.
kind of land in the position where you're like, I guess I am the voice. I am supposed to
And
speak out for a lot of these people.
What upsets me more is a person of power in your own like little community or little government. At the end of the day, you also got to put in the consideration of PR, public relations, within your community. That's why they have it at the end. Let the people speak their piece, but you don't go ahead and turn around and try to use it against them. Like, what kind of manipulation, mind games, is that type of thing is?
Big time
You got to
manipulation.
respect both sides. This like you're coming from that side before you came into power.
right.
What's going on here?
Right, and it was just totally lopsided, right?
Mhm.
And that it was just part of the whole narrative, right? This is like a theme that just kept coming up. Like, the people really had like no power, and they're supposed to have the whole power.
Yeah.
Right? Like, our literally one of the things I love to show people is our organizational chart for the city. It's like the people of Vista, city council, city manager, city attorney, and then everybody on my coworkers on staff, underneath that. So it's like it starts here with the people, right? And it was just really, really frustrating. So that's what I based my whole campaign on. Was like, we're gonna do it different, and then I would have like I spent like almost no money, right? Yeah, I'm not personally wealthy, right? So I couldn't like lend myself all this money to start my campaign. I had to like, it took me forever to raise like $6,000, and my opponent like just lent himself like $6,000 to start his campaign. I was like, man. So it really had to be a grassroots thing. And then people were like, I don't understand what you're doing. Like, you have your guitar, you're like singing at the park, right? Like, I would go with my friend, we would knock on doors, and he would bring his ukulele. So we just did it different, and I ended up winning by 66 votes. So it was really, 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 really close.
I applaud that one, bro.
Yeah, congrats.
Hell yeah.
Real close.
Hell yeah.
And even that is its own story, man, because I didn't officially win until late in the vote count. I was losing.
What,
Actually,
they were doing recounting?
so it's really slow, the count. It's accurate, but it's super slow. So like on election day, I was losing. My opponent had like 60% of the vote, and I had 40. And I was like, it was supposed to be a celebration party. We were like at Wavelength, this brewery in Vista, and we're like gonna be celebrating. I'm like, man, I just gotta not cry. Like, this is looking pretty harsh. Right. It's looking pretty sad here, and I'm seeing like some of my other friends, right, like not winning, and then there's a few people that were like, okay, they're for sure gonna win. And it took a long time to count it, right? And then the city, they send out this little like magazine newsletter type of thing, and they sent it out, and they were like, congratulations to my opponent, right? They like gave him because he was like an incumbent. They were like, congratulations to you. But at the same time, we had this thing called Measure Z, which is why we have legal retail cannabis shops in Vista.
Mm-hmm.
And that was passing with a yes, but by like, it was like close, but not even as close as my race with my opponent. And they were like, put like this little, asterisk there in the magazine, and they're like, too close to count. Like, the results aren't in, right? But for me and my opponent, where it was like, I think maybe we were like 50 votes different. They're like, oh, congratulations to you, right? So, and some
Wow.
other stuff, like I got a cease and desist letter because of the cannabis thing, right? I heard, that, people from the city were going and talking to organizations I was affiliated with, like asking about me. So it was pretty interesting. Yeah. But now that's where I'm at. It's like, for better or worse, you guys have me. You're stuck with me for 4 years, and I'm gonna be changing it up here, right?
At that point, it'd be
No.
like it's me against the world.
No, I'm glad you're in and that you're doing something for Vista, because I mean, a lot of people don't understand. Oh shit! You're okay, Louis? All right. Yeah, yeah. No, a lot of people don't really understand how big Vista is. Vista's actually pretty big.
It is.
It's just kind of spread out, you know. But when people think Vista, they automatically just think Vista Village and that little
Right.
downtown area. But no, it's huge over there. And then I just saw that I think the
Paseo Santa Fe.
yeah Paseo Santa Fe
Yeah.
sign just got switched over to Vista, right?
Yeah, that was a whole other conversation from the community, right? It's like, what the heck is Paseo Santa Fe?
Well, that's the street.
No, well, that's Santa Fe. So the
Oh.
street's not even called Paseo Santa Fe.
Mm.
It's Santa. So that's where North Santa Fe becomes South Santa Fe, right? And the whole thing was like rebranding the city. But my whole thing was like, you can't rebrand a city. You just got to invest in it,
Right.
you know?
Is that what's there to rebrand? This
Right.
is the brand.
This
What
is the brand.
the-
This is the brand, right? And so there was like a whole like campaign to the people wanted that sign to say Vista. They did not understand why I said Paseo Santa Fe. And the excuse always is like, we talked about this in council like 10 years ago, right? It's like, well, did you really invite people, right? Like, did you make this accessible? And then now that you're getting pushback and people have pride in our city and they wanted to say Vista, like, why can't we do that, right? So that ended up going to council to change the sign to say Vista.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I kind of read up on it. I never knew that it was the city who invested in that sign. I always thought it was part of that new complex development, and
There's like
that's why
commercial
nobody
type of
argued.
thing, you know.
Yeah, that's why I feel like nobody argued, because they thought it was part of the complex.
Right. It's and it gets kind of confusing, right? So like there's like, and then this is like going into the like nuts and bolts of it, but there's like this whole thing through the state called redevelopment, and it was a way for cities to access capital to redo parts of their community to make it. Basically, it's gentrification.
Oh, 100%.
Well, we see it over here in Oceanside.
Here too,
Right.
bro.
It's happening everywhere.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Right, and that's where it's like, where's the rent control, right? Where's oversight on landlords, right? What's the process to even get an apartment or a place to live, right? It's not the way that we're going right now. It's not sustainable because people's incomes are right here and rent is over here, and then there's like other stuff you got to be able to buy too, right? Like at some point you got to feed yourself.
Oh yeah, there's a. I keep on bringing it up every episode that I can. Like, there's a huge wage gap right now, and the amount of inflation that we as, I guess, consumers, you could say, are facing. It's ridiculous. Like, rent's too damn high.
It is.
That's all I gotta say.
Right? If these
Mhm.
rents are going to be this high, then the minimum wage needs to
Increase. Hasn't been done that in like in 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah,
It's
especially with the
like
gas
that.
prices going up too. Like,
Oh,
milk's
for
going
sure.
up, basic groceries are going up. It's
too
ridiculous.
much. It's really too much, right? And like that's a whole other thing too. Like this is a pretty young city, right? Where's our economic development to bring people into these at minimum entry level career tracks, right? Where you get like 40K to start with benefits, right? And you can move your way up, or you take that skill, go to another company that's going to value it at a higher rate once you get that skill in.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, we're not setting ourselves up for success in the future, right? And so like that's where I'm thankful, to have been on the Vista Economic Development Strategy Committee, and we pushed it, man. Like the Chamber of Commerce, we have a new CEO there, and she was pushing it too. She's like, "Where's the child care, right? Where's the workforce development? Like, why can't we, connect more with the school district. And that's one of the things too, like people really want to see the city work more with the school district, because those are two really big entities that make a difference in everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we can invest some funds here and help the school district. And then there's even projects on school district lands in other cities where they're building affordable housing, right? And workforce housing and senior housing, right? So there's all these creative ways to just make a city livable, right? So, yeah, it's been a really interesting journey just to like learn about all this stuff. And then to be able to like explain it and like break it down a little bit so we can have a general conversation. People can feel more empowered because they know a little bit more of what's happening in the city.
It's not like, the terminology that they use to
Right.
confuse the general
Dude,
public. and shit,
100%.
Now you get it. It's like it's not as confusing as it is. It's pretty simple. They're just using those words to go ahead and just throw you off.
Big
Semantics.
time.
Dude, that is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, we had Fernando Garcia on here. He was running for mayor here in Oceanside, and he was saying the same thing. Like he would try to fill out the paperwork, and it was just, first of all, a lot of paperwork and a
Lots
lot
of
of
paperwork.
vocabulary and stuff that to just like make it super complicated for the normal person not to be able to run.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I mean that's what I experience, right? Like this paperwork and like trying to figure out exactly, because you have to like submit it to the state. They have to like give you like the okay to go, right? So it's like at the city, at the state level, and it gets really confusing. And that's where I'm like, dude, like why didn't I learn about any of this in school? Like even when I paid to go to school, like I didn't learn about this stuff, right? So that's where we kind of have to take it upon ourselves to bring this information out to the public, um, and make government more accessible, because we're talking about like the lowest rung, right, of government is like city council, right? School board, city council, water board, these different types of boards that you can get on, fire district board, right? And it's hard. A lot of these positions are created for people that have a lot of privilege, right? Because that's just the way. I mean, it's like the long history of being in a colonized land.
Well, that's basically like the whole like history of the clash between social classes. That's
Right.
what the system has been built. That's
Right.
why it's like there's that lower class, upper middle class, and upper class type of thing.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
just continues to perpetuate itself in these systems that were created to keep the status quo, right? And so if we don't figure out how to like hack the system, right? Those 66 votes, that was hacking the system. And that was just hacking the system by
That was a
like
big
being
step.
grassroots.
Like if no one other, I'm just saying, if no one else will realize that that's actually a big old step right there, because now you actually got somebody for the community that actually gives a fuck representing them in a big way. That's like,
And I get to read, right? I get to read all these documents. I get to have one-on-ones with our city manager who, even knowing like the type of government that your city is a game changer. So like the city of Vista, um, Oceanside, right? We're a council manager type of government. So we have an elected body of 5 people, right? A mayor and 4 council members. Now we're in districts, right? Which is actually a really powerful thing for the community. And you can utilize that to the advantage of community values. But you have to get people on board and you have to want to do that, right? And
Yeah,
that in itself.
yeah, we got into that discussion with an old friend of mine, Jimmy Figueroa. Shouts out to him. We got into that old discussion too as well.
Shout out, Jimmy.
Talk about Oceanside districts as well,
Right.
And we talked, and he was like part of the whole like layup and the reconstruction of it,
Right.
which every time like I talk to him or if he ever comes around, it's just knowledgeable where I get from him. It's like, damn.
Right. And that's the kind of stuff like that is super powerful. And we're coming up to redistricting at all levels of government because it follows the census, right? So like at the county board level, that's going to happen. That's huge, right? State level, it could happen. Federal level, it could happen. In the city of Vista, it could happen. Because we went into districts in 2017, it probably wouldn't, I would assume that it wouldn't change like drastically like how the county could change, right? Because it's been like a decade, and there's more population here or there, and it could be, changed up a little bit more. But with the city, with the council manager, you get these 5 people, and they give direction to this unelected person, which is the city manager. So city council can hire and fire only 2 people, and that's the city attorney and the city manager.
Hmm.
And the city manager hires everybody else that works in your city.
So, would you say that the city manager is a little bit more influential than the mayor when it comes to
It,
the
it can
district?
so this a city manager can be more influential than the council, depending on
Oh.
how powerful the council is. So that's where, if you have a weak council, and in my opinion Vista had a weak council for a long time, because there wasn't like this interest of a majority trying to really look and examine at some of the issues that we have in our community and trying to fix it. So what happens is, a city manager, their job is to keep that city running, right? Like, you don't want to go into bankruptcy, you want to keep everything running. So their vision is really like business as usual. How can I keep this running, right? They have a tough job. They also get paid a lot, like 20 grand a month, right?
God damn.
Right?
He's,
So
he's chilling on the house on the hill over there.
and,
I'm over there in town side looking on the True story.
see, well, and that's like, I didn't, when I grew up, I didn't know like about these positions in my own backyard, right? You get, really good money. You get a pension, and you're set for life, right? So like, I want to see more people in my community, in our community, going into these types of positions, right?
What do you think is stopping people from getting into those positions? Bless you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
bless you. I think it's a lot. It's a lot of different things. One, if you don't know about it, how are you even gonna like get there? Two, if you do know about it, what are the barriers to get there, right? And some of those barriers can be education. They can be getting your foot in the door. Because remember, like, these institutions, who are they hiring? So what are the hiring practices? How many people in my city that work for my city, my coworkers, live in the city of Vista, are from Vista, right? That question you can ask of any city, whether it's Carlsbad, Oceanside, right? And so that's a whole thing that we can put pressure on and say, hey, we want more equitable distribution of these positions, and we want people that live in the city to have opportunities to, one, learn about these positions, right, when you're like this big, so way as you're getting older, right, you can make your pathway. Um, and then two, like when you're ready to apply for a job, like how can you make your way into these different institutions, right? Because that's powerful too, right? You're privy to a lot of information that the general public isn't, right? So that's where it's really important to have a strong council that sometimes needs to challenge city managers, right, in the institution, because it's so rigid, and it's over here and the community's over here, and there's not a lot of connection, right? And so like that's one of the things I've had to do when it comes to public safety. Like I was talking about, public safety is also being able to walk and not get run over, right? So how do we make it more walkable? I don't want to be hearing like, oh, people are just jaywalking. Like that's literally some of my colleagues, one of which has been voted out, um, was like, well, we don't want to put the onus on the city, right? I was like, dude, we're talking about a mom that was with her stroller just dropping her kids off, and she was in the side, like in the crosswalk from one sidewalk to the other, and she got hit by a car. Like, you're telling me that we can't find, we found this like uh pot of money, let's just call it, right? Because like I guess when you do construction stuff like that, you have to put money away, right? The construction company, and if they don't claim it in a certain amount of time, then the city gets to do whatever they want with it. So it was on the agenda, and it's like kind of like hidden in there, right? It was like, I think maybe a consent calendar item, and I was like, I'm gonna pull this and I'm gonna talk about it, and this accident just happened, I want to reappropriate that money to change the traffic signal timing in that intersection, so that way when you cross, you're not competing with cars trying to make, a left-hand turn or go straight, right? Especially near a school. And dude, you would not believe, like, that something that should have been like, oh, Corinna, that's great, let's do this, we have money, right? It was going to go into our general capital improvement. Um, and I was like, we can still have it in there, but let's earmark it for this intersection, right? And it was just like tugging. And I was like, at some point in the discussion, I was like, I can't believe that this is taking so long to have this discussion, right? Staff had already identified the fact that they were going to do this in this intersection. They just needed to fund it. And here's the money to fund it. And I'm getting pushback. So finally, we were able to get a majority to be like, okay, fine, that's good, right? But like, it shouldn't be that difficult. People should be able to understand that public safety is not just sheriff deputies. It's making sure that, your mom or your tia can walk safely, dropping their kids off every day, twice a day, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we do in council.
Do you feel there's a huge disconnection between the people and the local politics in Vista?
Yeah, there still is. There still is, and it just means that we have to continue pushing on the institution to communicate, have more workshops. And then it didn't, the pandemic closed everything down.
Mhm.
So being virtual, it has its perks, but it also means that you're even further disconnected from the public. And, my role is a very public role, very community oriented, talking to people. And so when there's that more distance, right, you have to find different opportunities to be able to connect with people. But even with our cannabis dollars, right? Like, I want more people going to the city and being like, why aren't we using this $5 million for like X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about the cannabis policies in Vista?
Yeah, sure. So in 2018, there were actually 3 things on the ballot about cannabis. There was one called Measure Z that was written by an outside group, and there was enough signatures from people in Vista to put it as like a people's initiative, which meant that the city council could either have adopted it or they put it to a public vote. And they decided not to adopt it. They decided to put it to a public vote. Well, what's a good way to make that hard to pass? By putting other things on the ballot from the city that confuse voters.
Mhm.
So the city council put 2 opposing options on the ballot. One was for delivery only, right? And this other one, Measure Z, was to people wanted retail storefronts, right? The other one was a tax, and it gave it would give future councils the ability to set a tax from like 0 to 12% on like different types of cannabis revenue, whether it's like
Manufacturing, distribution,
exactly,
because there's something
Cultivation.
similar to that going on here in Oceanside, but I believe Vista's already been past that point.
we are past that point, yeah. And so it was slim, right? Like, people were really confused as to what to vote for, and if you don't get a certain percentage, like if you don't get above 50%, like, it's going to fail, right? And so I believe it was, just kind of like a deceptive tactic to make sure that it failed, because the majority of the council was really against retail
No, I bet.
storefronts,
I bet.
right? So it ended up passing, right? And guess what happened? So we used to have tons of illegal dispensaries, right? Which means that people, there's no taxes being collected. That's like one thing. But the other thing is, like, it could be really dangerous, right? What's the quality of the product being sold? That's one of the things with the vapes, right? Some people were putting like vitamin E oil in there, and people were getting really sick. So if you have a regulated framework, you can, guess what, regulate the market and make sure that the consumer is getting the product that they think they're getting. And you can also kind of quash the illegal market. And so that's what happened. We used to have like, at one point we had more than 12 illegal dispensaries operating. The city was spending over $1 million just trying to like smash them down.
Sending the raids and then the courts
Right.
and then the fines and then
Right.
bro,
And that
just-
takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes money. So we were spending money. We weren't getting money back.
Mhm.
Right. And the problem wasn't going away. So it was like, at some point, it was going to be millions and millions of dollars that you're spending. Right. And the problem is not being alleviated in any way. So Measure Z came in, and So we have 11 dispensaries. A lot of people are under the impression that Vista can only have 11 dispensaries, but it's actually written that it's one dispensary per 10,000 Vistans. So as our population goes up, you can have more dispensaries,
Okay.
right? So there was a lottery process. Individuals were chosen via this lottery. Then they had to go to the state to apply, right? They had to have a facility. It had to be, within the parameters set forth by Measure Z, which means like it can't be super close to a school, right? It's got to have distance from a place that could be youth
Kind of like
activities.
alcohol.
Right, exactly.
You can't have it like 100 feet from elementary school or middle school, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and this was like even further away than that, right? So fast forward to now, we have all 11 dispensaries open. And originally, the city had estimated that we were going to get $1.3 million of tax revenue. And at the time, they were like, this is a conservative estimate. And my question was like, okay, when you say this is a conservative estimate, that means that we're on a spectrum here. And this being conservative, what's a not conservative estimate? And I never got an answer to my
Probably
question.
like 5.
And that's where we're at. So our fiscal year just closed out at the end of June. The new year started on July 1st. And actually, early on into just having a few dispensaries open, that $1.3 million figure was like, we're going to blow past that. So that my coworkers on staff had to re-estimate, and they added 1.7 million right to that. So
That's about 3 mil, right?
3 mil right there, right? And then by the time we got to council discussion, they're like, well, we think we're going to do a little over 4 million, right? But here's my whole issue with it is that I think it's great that we've been able to eliminate illegal dispensaries completely. Like we don't have any more, right? We're getting this revenue, but it goes directly to our general fund. And the general fund can be used for anything.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right.
There you go.
But
and that's where it gets kind of.
and that's where it can get complicated because one of our city goals is to hire more deputies. Not even based on anything.
Do you
right?
think they need more deputies?
I don't think so.
So our crime rate, right? It was going down, and we had this city goal of hiring more deputies. Like that's not the only thing that we need in public safety. We need streetlights. Like we don't even have streetlights, and they're
it is pretty dark in Vista. I'm
it's
not gonna lie.
right. It's like super dark, especially like you have like historically this area that has a lot of crime. And like even on my ride along with the sheriffs, I was like, hey, what do you guys think about streetlights? They're like, oh yeah, we need them. Like I'm totally down for that, right? Because we're not gonna hire a sheriff to just like shine a light there all day, right? So there's different ways that you can invest that money. But when it goes to general fund, you can put it in anything. And the problem that I have with that is that I want it to go back into the community in a meaningful way. Right. And that's where I think like youth development programs are really important. Lowering the cost of extracurricular activities, like different recreation activities. Like I remember when I was little, I don't even know how my mom did it to have me and my brother, playing competitive soccer and all these different sports. Like the uniforms are expensive, the equipment's expensive. You got to go to tournaments. You have to have someone to drive you. Like when you have one kid, it's expensive enough, and then you start having another kid or 3 kids, like how do you even have money to do all this stuff, right? So that's something that the city of Vista could like reinvest this cannabis money and make it more equitable, right? We can maybe get trees on Santa Fe, right?
Maybe start a programming where local citizens can go ahead and start getting their licensings for landscaping to get their companies more up. Because
Right.
when individuals want to start their own companies up, of course they got to get into licensing, and all that, pay their taxes and shit. Maybe.
That's a good idea. Like being able to have workshops where you can figure out like, okay, how do I make my side hustle legit? Right. So that way you don't have to worry about the repercussions of
don't
it
get
not
harassed.
being right. Because now we also have the state of California decriminalized street vending, which is good because of all the stuff that was happening in LA. So it ended up becoming a state policy, and cities had to adopt that. So we adopted that in the city of Vista. but a lot of people don't know about it, and they also don't know like the process, because again, it's like that paperwork,
Right.
right? It's always like this paperwork. I feel like the paperwork is its own barrier, right? And then you're also talking about a community where it's like 40% of our community speaks a language other than English, and most of the stuff is in English, it's not in Spanish, right? um, so being able to have like bilingual workshops, and then also, fund entrepreneurship in this way, where then you can recapture sales tax and stuff like that, business license permitting, and then it goes back into the city. It's a win-win. So I actually really like that idea.
I have my moments.
I think
Yeah, you do, Bruce. You always have your moments.
that's good. That's good, Bruce. Yeah.
No, but I really do like what's going on in Vista, the whole change, and I feel like now there's a transparency, and you could see where the city's going. I mean, I think in Old North County, Vista's one of the few spots that actually has retail for cannabis,
It is.
and
Yeah.
they're growing with their breweries too. There's a lot of up and coming microbreweries in Vista.
Bud
that
and
I know.
brew in
Yeah.
Vista.
And
Yeah.
it's changing. I
Yeah.
see the shift in Vista, and it's not just the tourist attraction that you see in the village. Like there's other things going around the city, and I think Sycamore is gonna be the next place to boom, at least in my opinion, because there's so much stuff happening on that skirt of Vista.
That's really good insight. And there's definitely, so we have our business park, right? And then we have residential, and we have the freeway, we have commercial,
Yep.
right? And some of these commercial centers aren't doing so good, right? So it's a lot of parking, not that many people utilizing, right? So it's like, how do you up the value of that for the community, right? You can have like more mixed development, right? Where you have your places of work close to where you live, close to where you can shop, right? So that's really good insight. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only obstacle, at least in that area, is just like the zoning, because that's really what it comes down to sometimes. But aside from that, like the new progress and the new vibe that's going through the city of Vista, it's exciting. I mean, I wish that Escondido or even San Marcos adopted something like that, because that will make so much sense for the county, and I think it'll be great for everybody and
Just for all together,
all the
just for us to be on the
generations.
same tip
Yeah,
and on the same
yeah,
mission.
big
Just
time.
go ahead and move forward.
Right.
If we all want, if one part of us in this county want to level up, we should all go ahead and level
Yeah,
up.
because I mean,
Not
there's
one of
there's
us,
this
you know?
one big old road called the
Mhm.
78
Right.
highway that unites us all.
Mhm.
I think it'll be a great thing.
Right. Yeah. And you're totally right. There is zoning, right? And where does that get changed? At city council, right? And so a lot of times a developer will come, and we have a lot of our councils are pro development. And unfortunately, what happens is, like, say it's a good idea, but it's like kind of like a giveaway, right? Because you also want the developer to be like, okay, well, what do you got for me, for my community, right? I'm doing this favor of like flipping this to make you money. So what are you gonna do for my community? Where's the green space, right? Where is that, affordable housing, right? It can't just all be market rate housing. Like, and then we don't want it segregated, right? Like that's like where we have this thing called inclusionary housing, which we don't have in Vista, but other cities have it. And it's like when something is being built, right, whether it's an apartment complex or like housing, like single family housing, um, a certain percentage of what's built has to be affordable, but we don't have that in the city of Vista, right? So it could be a really great way to actually get units built that are affordable. And that's something that I continue to fight for. And right now we're in a 3-2 council where, 2 people believe that we should have inclusionary housing and 3 people don't. So we're like outvoted on that consistently in our discussions. But cannabis we're at 5-0 votes now for cannabis. We just
Wow.
voted. Yeah.
They saw dollar signs.
Oh yeah, that's what it
Right.
comes down to
Right.
always.
The dollar signs were raining down, man. Like, it didn't. All these boogeymen of like, it's going to increase crime, right? This
Oh,
and this
nah.
and that.
Oh no, no,
None of that
no.
came to fruition. None of it came to
I
fruition.
feel like if the world smokes a little bit more cannabis, like
Consume.
consume.
You know, you can have your
My
tea,
bad, my
you
bad.
can have your tea, you can have your brew, you can have your wine. You ain't gotta smoke it.
Consume, Bruce, consume. No, but
Exactly.
No, but going back on what Victor said about the changes that are going on in Vista, uh, do you feel also that might be causing a little bit more of gentrification?
Definitely. I mean, it's not even it's not questionable to me. And that's where stuff like inclusionary housing is really important, because when and affordable housing, because when we start redeveloping, right, which just basically means gentrifying, um, the people that have lived in this community for such a long time deserve value and honor and respect, and they should be able to partake in having some of these items for themselves, right? Whether it's community space, whether it's a nice, affordable place to live, right? Not somewhere where, the house is, like 60, 70 years old, right? A crowded condition. So, like, that's where policy can really change the dynamics and make it more equitable for the people already there. I understand, like, some people just want to make it nice for people that are going to come in to the city that aren't part of it, right? And it's like, we want people to come in, we want our city to grow, but at the same time, like, how are we respecting the businesses that have been there for decades, right? That have been mom and pop shops, right? Like,
Yep.
where's the help for them, right? To help them and their building look nice, right? And where's the affordable housing for, a young adult, right? Trying to get, a space of their own,
Yeah, or just
right?
students who were trying to go to San Marcos or even
Right.
Palomar.
Right, because then you can catch the Sprinter. It's right there.
Yep.
Catch the Sprinter, right? So that's a way that, as a region, in every single city, like, we have to be unified. We have to be able to push forward and talk about these things. Um, and that's where it starts. But we're not even having all those conversations on the 78 corridor. But I really see Vista as an example of what we can do in other cities, right? So our next election season is 2022. It's next year. We got 3 positions up. That's a majority on the council. And if we have a majority that's community focused, like, not like bullshit focused, right? But like real community values, of people that have been in this community for a long time and deserve the best, then we can really make a big difference, right? We have the mayor position up. We have the district I represent, District 1 up. We have District 4, which is represented by my colleague, who's also decided to run for mayor. So he's giving up that position to run for mayor, right? So there's a ability, in Vista, to really set this example, and I think that 2022 is going to be a big year. It's also a year that people vote less because it's not a presidential election,
Oh yeah.
right?
Course,
So then that's where the community, like, how do I bring this information out to the community so that way more people can be informed, right? Like, I got to do one-on-ones with people. I have an open door policy. You can hit me up on my Instagram at Represent Vista.
You really gotta be in the trenches for this one.
I mean, that's really how he got around.
Just hit me up, man. Hit me up, and we can have a conversation. But I've made a lot of um uh one-on-ones through Instagram, right? Where people are like, hey, I got a question about this. I'm like, hey, you want to meet in my office? Like, a lot of people have never been in the Civic Center, right? If you have time, like, this is when the office is open. If not, like, we can meet anywhere you want. We can do Facebook, right? We can do Zoom. We can do on the phone. We can meet in person. You can come to my trash walk on Wednesdays. And it makes a difference. And it really is a one-on-one thing. And then also being able to talk to larger groups, right? And just activating other people's agency, because I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong. I'm here to tell you that you can make a difference. And there's a pathway to that. And maybe one day, right? Like, I want more people to run for city council, because that's really how we start lifting these values that we share and putting them into policy. And, like, a city council person might become a state person, might become a federal person, right? And then you got to hold these people accountable. Like me, I'm like, dude, hold me accountable. I want to be, if you're my friend, like, I want to hear first from you when I fuck up. Right? Like,
Always.
please tell me, like, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you do that? And I played sports my whole life, so I'm used to like having people critique me, right? So it's like I don't get offended. What I don't like is when there's like this essence of like complaining and not doing, right? Because like
Mm-hmm.
we have to also be doing, right? You have to put the ganas in, and then you have to figure out what's your game plan, right? Because we got enough complainers in the world, we don't have enough doers, right? So we
True.
got to do it. And if you want to complain, like go ahead, right? But like also have a conversation with me so I can tell you like, okay, I hear what you're saying. Like what is your goal? What's your outcome? Like what do you want to strive for? And how can we have a plan for you to get over here? Right? And that's how we can change the trajectory of someone's, grievance. Like maybe this is something that's super doable, and we just got to think through it a little bit more.
So for next year in 2022, since your seat is up, are you planning on running again?
Yeah, I mean, no one signed up to run against me, but I haven't signed up to run for it.
Anything
Yeah.
can happen.
Yeah, there's like two people signed up for mayor right now to run for it. There's three people signed up to run for District 4, and no one signed up to run for District 1, right? But there's work that takes more than 4 years, and it also takes a majority. And I'm hoping that I get to run and represent people that they want me still. Like if the community doesn't want me, it's okay. But if you want me, like let's do this. We're a team. And I really see some big wins in the future for our community.
Oh, I'm also rooting for Vista. I'm telling you, it's gonna be a hot spot really soon.
Bruh.
Well, since you're born and basically bred in Vista,
Mhm.
what are really good memories that you have like growing up over there?
Oh man, I have so many. One of my favorite things, we used to have family parties at Bringle Terrace Park and at Wildwood Park. And I just remember being able to go into the creek and you see like these little crawdads, right? And the carne asada would be going and the pastel would be ready. And like, there'd be a piñata and a band playing. And like, those are the good memories that I have. And I just want our future generations to be able to experience that too, right? With all the, without trash and pollution,
Mhm.
right? So many of my memories are uh, involved in a eco-friendly way, right, where it's like environmental, right? Like just because of how I grew up, I grew up with privilege. Right, my grandparents had their own nursery, you know and I was able to run around even though like I lived in a converted garage, right, growing up. um I still had access to something that a lot of kids don't have, right? Which is that green space. So for me, that is just the best type of memories that I have is like being able to be under the shade of a tree, like building those forts with my cousins, right?
Yeah.
Like all that kind of stuff. I really, really, really enjoyed it. And I just want to make sure that we're having that for other generations.
Hey,
No, I like that. Well, one more time for all those people that didn't catch it. What is the Instagram that they could catch you at and send you the DM to link
Yeah.
up?
So because my name, Corinna Contreras, people spell Corinna like 7 million ways. As soon as I hear like, I like turn around, right? So I decided for my whole campaign when I was first running in 2017, let's just do at represent Vista, right? Like that's simple. So that's still my Instagram handle, Twitter, Facebook. I'm most active on Instagram, but at represent Vista. And if you have any questions about the city, just let me know, right? Or anything else. Like I'm an open book and I have an open door policy. So for me, we never know how long we're going to live, right? COVID is kind of like highlighted how beautiful and precious our time here on earth is. So let's figure out how to do this better together, right? And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm about. If you're trying to be about something else, right? Like we might have a little bit of pleito, but
We'll keep that in the
We'll
streets.
talk about it over a carne asada, you know.
that's right. Yeah.
Before we get to comments, we have a couple of comments, but I do have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I have noticed that Vista, you had, like you said, has sheriffs and deputies, and compared to like here in Oceanside, where there's a police department, what is the difference between having like a police department and having the sheriffs and deputies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are 9 contract cities. So there are 9 cities here in San Diego County that contract with the sheriffs. Um, the difference is that with your own police department, one, it can be actually really expensive to have your own police department, but the trade off is that you have you get to tell them what to do. Right? So,
Okay.
and that really depends on the city leadership, right? So it could be a good or bad thing, right? Here in the city of Oceanside, you guys have some council members that I think are kind of like, I'm not gonna say any names, but there's some toxic people, and I wouldn't want them telling the police how to police because they're gonna do it in a very bad way. But then you have some other ones that, maybe have better ideas, right? So that's where it's different. Like you have direct control over how the city uses its police department. With the sheriffs, we have to negotiate this contract like every 5 years, right? So it's going to be coming up, and we can tell them like this is what we want. We have like different types of cops. So one of the deputies, there's like this cops group, right? And they work with like homelessness and like different things, right? So we can kind of tell them like general stuff like this is what we want, but we can't tell them like it's not going to be like direct and directing them what to do on a day-to-day basis. They have their bosses are actually the board of supervisors.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, so that's the difference, right? So like here in Oceanside, the police department who pays them and who their bosses are is the city of Oceanside. In Vista, with the sheriff's department, we pay a contract, right? And we can kind of tell them, like, give them an idea of what we want, but their direct bosses are the board of supervisors because that they're at a county level, right?
So it's more of kind of like an offload type of thing. Instead of having like your own department, you're like shipping it off and giving it to the deputies and the sheriffs.
Correct. Right.
Okay, got
Right.
you, got you. That's interesting. And also have another one. Can you give us a quick breakdown of how the districts work in Vista?
Yeah, sure. So we have 4 districts. Um, you have to live in that district to run in that district, and only the people in that district can vote for you. So District 1 is the district I represent. Is actually the smallest district because we're higher density, right? So geographically it's smaller. It's the northwest corner. District 2, and districts are done the way that they're numbered is like um, systematically done, meaning that uh, the furthest like northwest is District 1, and then it goes like to the east, and then it's 2, and then it kind of like has like this pattern, right? So in Vista, District 2 is bigger because the density, it's just not as dense. There's more like single family housing that has like acres right to it. And it's like the foothill area where I grew up, right? The Civic Center, a lot of downtown. And then there's District 3, which is um, the Transit Center West. So, like Breeze Hill, uh, Grapevine Elementary. And then there's District 4, which has a little bit north of the 78, like Postal Way. Um, and then most of it is like this little chunk, right? That's really close to Carlsbad, which people know as Shadow Ridge.
Yep.
So those are the 4 districts. And coming up, because whenever you get census data, which is every 10 years, there has to be an evaluation of whether the districts are distributed in a proper manner, right? So that's something that the city of Vista will undergo. and it has to be done by 2022 when the elections happen, right? So this census data is going to be coming out in I think September.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
sure.
Trying to think. I had another question, but it just like I just lost it. Just lost that train.
Well, you probably find questions in the comments.
It jumped in the sprinter and then just took off, dog. Like,
We're trying to make the sprinter faster too. Oh, and like one thing, right, that I think is really important for everybody to know is who you elect on city council ends up representing you on different boards, like Sandag, like North County Transit District. I barely. It's like I'm going to be coming up on my third year in December, and this is the first time I ever get a voting position on a board. I had to fight for it, and I go North County Transit District. A lot of my community uses that. Like I need to be on that board, right? And so one of the things that I'm fighting for is youth opportunity passes, free transit for individuals that are like 24 years and younger, right? Because that's really important. You know, most of our people that ride the Breeze, right, which is the bus system, over 70% are making less than 45,000, right? But like 27% are making 15,000 or less. So as soon as you have a rate increase, it really, really impacts them. So stuff like that, right? We got to remember that you're not just voting for a city council person, you're also voting for someone to represent you on these regional boards, and that's really important.
shout out to Rocco. She just tuned in. Hi. All right, one more question I have. What
Sure.
we were talking about Oceanside earlier. As a politician from Vista, what is your take on how the politics are working here in Oceanside at the moment?
I don't think they are working. Um, to be honest with you, I mean, you had that scandal, right, with the individual who resides on council. That it's like, do they even live in Oceanside?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I don't think that's working very well. And it just seems like there's a lot of conflict, and also like, where's the cannabis? You know, for Vista, it's great because we're like capitalizing on this, right? And it's actually benefiting our community. But I also think that there's a lot of people here in Oceanside that have been fighting for cannabis for a long time, and my hope would be that people's voices get heard, because that's definitely a value that a lot of people in the community have. But I just hope for the best for all our cities here, because we're in it together. This is a regional issue, right? All these things. Homelessness is a regional issue. Affordability is a regional issue. Our climate, the way it's changing so fast, is a regional issue, right? Transportation is a regional issue. Workforce is a regional issue, right? Like, if we have some good jobs over in Vista, I want people in Oceanside to be able to get there, right? Easily, right? Transportation is a huge obstacle for some people. And you guys have over here in Miracosta College, I got a lot of people in Vista that go to Miracosta. I want to make sure they can get to Miracosta quickly, easily, right? It's accessible, not just because you have a car, right? So a lot of people don't have transportation, right? So those are the kind of things, like, on my wish list. I just want all these cities to come up, and I want us to lean on one another and figure out, like, how do we do this better, because we can always do better.
Oh yeah. And if everybody contributes a little bit of help here, a little bit of help there, it really makes a difference.
Huge difference.
All right, Louis. Well, are you ready for those comments? I've been waiting for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
You
seen
gotta
them on the
listen
screen
to
this whole time.
Oh yeah, no, they're yeah. I've been waiting, man. We just been, all right. So RM the poet is saying they need to stop the gentrification in Vista.
Shout out to RM.
Juan
RM
Lozano
the
saying
poet.
hire me for traffic control. RM,
send us the resume.
yeah.
We'll check it out.
RM saying the sheriffs are fucking assholes. They're crooked as fuck. Trust me, those fuckers are crooked as fuck. He gets harassed so much from sheriffs.
Hey, and sometimes they do go by fitting the description, and I completely understand that. That's not cool.
Juan is asking, with all this madness going on in this past year and a half, does she believe police has been backing off with fear of being in a social media scandal?
Good question.
That's a good question. I think until there's actual accountability for them, that, you know, what's the repercussion, right? Because like my cousins have told me too, right? Like one time they got stopped. Uh, I have two cousins that I grew up with really close. They're like my brothers. And, you know, one of them, they just got hit up by the sheriffs and they weren't doing anything. They were like literally going down the street, walking kind of like maybe 2 miles to get something to eat. And they were accused of stealing a car, and the car didn't even work. First of all, that they were saying,
They were pushing the car.
right? Like they were walking, right? And there's like this car like somewhere over there, and they were like, hey, like blah blah blah. And you know, they got, you know, forced down. And my cousin, one of my cousins, they're brothers, one of my cousins was like, I'm gonna, you know, record you. And the cop was like, oh, whatever. Like the deputy was like, whatever, I'll be famous, you know. And so, and that was a while ago, but I think that mentality is still out there. So one of the things is like when it comes to accountability for our deputies,
For sure.
that also happens with our district attorney, which is also an elected position. So our sheriff, our top sheriff, who is Bill Gore right now, and our district attorney, who is Summer Steffens, those are elected positions, and we get to vote for these people, right? So that's going to be important too. Like, who are we going to put in those positions? Because to me, it's kind of like these racist statues, right, that are getting knocked down. Like, we kind of have to topple it from the top. If people aren't working for us, then we got to replace the system here. That way, people under their command know what's up, right? Like you're gonna be held accountable.
It's like
Oh,
when a
big time.
revolution regime happens, you don't start off with a statue, you topple the government,
Right.
and then get to the statues. You know,
Do,
Yeah,
do the
it's at the very
sheriffs
top.
do they wear body cams out in Vista?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Do they turn them on?
That's a different question.
question.
All right, well, what else you got, Louis?
All right. What I'm saying, the problem with the police is that none of them have enough practice. You can't possibly learn all you need within the boot camp training they get. You always got to blame the system. That's where the problem begins. It's more of a statement than a
There's
question.
definitely a lot more training that has to happen, but we've seen in other communities across the United States that they get all this training and they're still making, you know, decisions that are severely impacting and ending someone's life, and they're not justified, right? So at the end of the day, what are other strategies that we can use outside of a badge and a gun to address some of the issues that we have in our community, like domestic violence, right? Youth delinquency, right? Like some of these things you really would do better with counselors, social workers, economic opportunity, right? So that's where we have to be careful, right? Because we kind of want to use law enforcement for everything. We want to use them to combat homelessness, right? All this stuff. It's just at the end of the day, we need more strategies than just a badge and a gun for these types of issues.
Interesting. All right, on to the next one. We have CM Rocco saying, "Hear ye, cop out. MCC is easy by bus already. We don't need a Grand Central train station for mobility." I mean, see if she put some more. And then we have Corey. What's up, man? How you doing? He says no storefront weed shops in Oceanside because of military base. I consider it courtesy to keep these guys out of trouble. Many of them young and from different parts of the country. They don't need the temptation. Marine money is good for Oceanside local businesses.
Oh, that's a good point.
Also, Streamlooks Pro. Thank you, man. But
I know a lot of people in the service that, you know, do consume cannabis every once in a while, though.
I feel like that would probably help them out.
A
A
lot
little
of
bit.
times there's a tendency to consume alcohol at higher rates, and that can be extremely detrimental to someone.
Yeah, and I mean, we also do have a veteran population here in the city and in the county, which, I mean, some people are not okay, and they need some of that help, like through CBD oils and stuff. You know, there's different alternatives than just the THC most popular product out there.
Right. And I still think that we need better transportation. because I definitely know a lot of people in Vista that do have a hard time. I have constituents that it takes them 2 hours just to go to the bank, there and back. And that's if the bus doesn't break down.
Yeah, I feel Oceanside has a bit better transportation when it comes to public than Vista.
Yeah, the bus doesn't have that many routes in Vista, which I think is it's a little odd.
I think maybe that's why. I mean, I'm not sure, but I think that's probably what Rocco said. It's easy by bus already. Maybe it's more of a like a Vista type of
Because we already
situation.
have the NC, the station right over here in the airport district and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we're good
Yeah.
over here in this.
Yeah, for
This part of
Vista,
the-
it's pretty rough, man.
And that's all. That's all the comments we got.
Cool.
Yeah, Corey Berg. Oh yeah, he already said that. Also, stream looks pro. Grazie. I just wanted to hear that one more time. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie.
It looks good. Yeah.
But I mean, do you guys have any more questions? I mean,
Any burning questions?
Not necessarily questions,
anybody out there? Do you guys have any questions or comments? No. Well, I mean, they can't like talk to us, but
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think I have any more questions, but I did see that you're also involved with ADHOC. I'm not too sure what that committee is about. Ad hoc or something like
Ad
that.
hoc. You know what? We don't have any ad hoc committees
Oh, okay.
in Vista. That's something that we can have.
what
That
is
actually
what is
has-
the ad hoc?
So basically, an ad hoc committee. You guys have them here in the city of Oceanside, but it's where so say we wanted to review something as a council, right? We break up, and maybe there's two members of the council that are part of this committee. They like talk to other people in the community, maybe some experts, whatever the case is, and then they bring that report back to council, and you can have a discussion on it, and then you can create policy, right? So that I actually have wanted to do an ad hoc committee with some of the issues that we have, but we don't have it, right? So that's
wow.
also something that's like, do the other members on the council, right? If there's a majority that wants something, then we can move forward. If there's not a majority that wants it, then it kind of just goes away until there is a majority, and hopefully someone brings it back to the table.
Oh wow. Man, politics.
I-
It's always you got to do this thing before you do that thing. But you know what? Before you do that, please fill out this application.
My tactic
It's
is
that
I just keep
paperwork,
bringing it
man.
up, keep bringing it up, keep bringing it up. Just don't shut up about
Right.
it.
And that works.
Mm-hmm.
That works.
It's like the idea is like you're gonna have to kill me for this idea to die out. It's
Pretty
have to die
much,
for me.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then, even if you are no longer here, if you're able to bring that communication out to the community, maybe someone else will carry that torch, forward. So there's a lot that we can do.
And one more question before we head out.
Sure.
What do you see, or what do you see, or what are you trying to do, or what do you think Vista should be going forward? And that was a horribly worded question. But what would you like to see, like in the future for the agenda when it comes to Vista?
Wow, a lot of things, man. I would like to see us not be scared of using the word equity and inclusion, right?
Mm.
So, like, I'll give you an example. Our climate action plan, it doesn't say equity in there, right? I talk about our tree canopy. That's the easiest way to see the inequities in our community, right? It's not okay to just be planting a bunch of trees at Bringle Terrace Park
Mhm.
at the expense of not planting them in other parts of the city, especially on a transit corridor like North Santa Fe, where people deserve to walk in a little bit more shade,
Right.
So I really look forward to having a council in the future, and maybe I'm part of it, where we can have these discussions, because when we did workshops for our climate action plan, that was one of the top 3 things that people wanted. One, they wanted trees. One, they wanted us to have an equity clause, right? Vista Community Clinic has asked about having a vulnerability study. I think that's important, right? To
Mm.
see where the most vulnerable in our community are for so many reasons, right? We're getting record heat year after year, right? We need to have more cool zones. Do we have enough cool zones in areas where we have more vulnerable populations? that they can access these cool zones, right? If there's a wildfire, a lot of people in my community in District 1 in that part of Vista, you know, they don't have a car to just be able to pack up and leave. So how do they evacuate, right?
Mhm.
So like that's where we really need to focus on figuring out our community a little bit better and driving policy from like actual data, right? Not because we have a feeling, right, that we need more deputies. Like
Yeah, go stand over
where's the
there.
data? Where's the data, right?
Hey, go stand over there and see how you feel the heat. You know.
Big and A. It was surprising because I actually had a friend of mine recommend me to reach out to you for the show.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I can say who it is.
You want me to play a game with you?
Oh yeah. What
He
game? What
wanted to
game?
make you guess. He told me to say this phrase, but I was like, "You sure you want me to say this phrase?" He's like, "Oh, maybe you're right." So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it my way. All right. All right. Most of the time, like if you get into a serious conversation and jokingly, he would say, "Hey, whoa, take it easy." I'll give you another hint.
That
Think
sounds.
with that one.
Do you know Oscarin?
I do know him, but he was not the one that recommended.
Okay, take it easy.
Not to me, anyways. He didn't
Right,
recommend it.
right.
You're close. He is Mexican.
That narrows it down.
I don't even. That sounds really familiar. I'm like trying to like.
His name will come to the phrase like, "Well, I'm always a," and his first name will finish that phrase.
I'm stumped right now, man. That's funny.
Really? All right. I want to make sure I don't get his last name fucked up. All right.
Yeah, we have a habit of messing up last names here on the
Yeah,
podcast.
it's all right though.
Hopefully, if he is watching, Angel Torres.
No way,
Yeah.
Angel. What's up, dude?
Mhm.
I haven't talked to him in forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually worked together. That's the job that I quit.
Mm. Small world. But yeah, basically, I always catch him around. We always have like small time discussions. They always try to hit me with like the politics, idealistic views, and when I'm chilling,
Yeah.
I like to chill. Basically, I could say my ideas, but where can it go unless I want to take some action or like there's some action that's gonna happen behind it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah,
Dude, next time you see him, tell him what's up for me. That's cool.
yeah, for sure. Now he
Yeah.
probably is gonna watch the show. She's probably gonna rewind and be like, "So
What's
where's my
up,
shout out?"
Angel?
There you go.
I got
Give
you
your
for a
shout
couple
out,
of
dog.
seconds all the way to the end. Got you prime time.
Oh shit.
No,
And his brother too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Both of them. I know both
yeah,
of them. Mhm.
Yeah.
Small world, isn't it?
It's a small world, man.
Mhm.
That's cool.
yeah, but I mean, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you coming by and spending some time with us talking about Vista politics in North County. Can you tell people one more time where they can find you?
Yeah, at Represent Vista. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You know, if some of my other contact information is on my Instagram too. So if you want to send me an email, you know, you can, if it's like something about the city, it's C Contreras at cityofvista.com. My cell phone number is on there too. I'm a texter, so if you want to reach me, text me. But you can also call my office. If you want to have a one-on-one, we can do it in person. We can do it virtually, on the phone, however you want. Really important that we have these conversations. And you know, there's so many questions out there, and we need to get answers to them and then figure out like how we can do this better together, right? Because it's not just about Vista, it's about Oceanside too, right? My summers, I lived in Oceanside here at the beach. I grew up a lot, you know, going between Vista and Oceanside. So I think together we can really just have a better community and more access to opportunity, because you shouldn't have to wait to be great. And in Vista, I don't want people to have to wait. I want people to be able to, bam, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like how you guys did. This is really awesome. I really appreciate y'all having me on the show.
No problem.
thank
dog.
you.
I tell you, like, I tell these people, right? Give me a recommendation. Let me reach out to them. No, there's finally someone.
Yeah, they came through, no doubt, Bruce. Well, thank you again, City Council,
Yeah,
Corinna.
you can just call me Karina. It's all good.
You know, it was really hard to find your ass on Instagram. I was like, I find the name. No, I was like, I hit him up. I was like, bro, how do I find her?
That's what I'm saying, man. Everybody spells my name different, so I was like, if you want to find me, it's at Represent Vista.
It took
You'll
me
find me
that,
there.
that threw me off. Oh,
Yeah, man, I mean, there's so many ways to spell Karina. Like,
Right.
And pronounce it too, dude.
Yeah.
yeah, like I mean, you can put it without, with like one less N. You know,
Right.
there's a K-A-R-R-I-N-A.
Yeah, that one's popular.
There's a K-O. Like, like it's like a mixture of like letters
Corinna with the C, I guess.
with a C-O and two N's. No,
Yeah.
but I mean, do you guys have any last thoughts?
No last thoughts. But I do hope that you had a good time with us here at the
I
Kick
did.
It Podcast.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thanks.
It's,
I really appreciate the opportunity. Just good conversation.
I hope you come back when like the whole mayor thing goes down, bro.
Yeah. Once the election comes around, yeah,
Right.
hit us up. We would love to
2022.
have you here.
Mhm.
That sounds good.
Oh, perfect.
Anytime you guys want me, I'm here. I'm for it, man.
All right.
And now, especially that I know where you're at.
You're not at a random
It was-
KFC down in the valley.
I'm like, man, are you guys by this KFC? Because this is where my GPS is taking
Yeah,
me.
we were-
Is there something going on in the back that I should?
I'm like, I cannot find this building, man.
Yeah, we're gonna do the show next to the fryer over here. Like,
This just went down. They got to rent out a whole space.
they give us complimentary buckets.
Fuck, I wish.
Well,
Yeah.
hey Bruce, would you like to lead us out in that case?
Any last thoughts? Nothing. Nobody else? Bam, bam. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, this is where it comes to the end of the night here on Wednesdays. Catch us next time on Monday as we're going to go along with these rest of these shows. Interviews going to come along. We apologize for last time on Monday not streaming. Hey, man, sometimes, things happen and that gives us a chance to maintenance. Hey, let us be. This is what we do. Other than that, though, I do appreciate y'all tuning in every time. We do appreciate it. I hope you click on the like and subscribe to wherever you're at. Like and follow on Facebook. Also, like our posts on Instagram. Follow on Instagram, but especially follow and, subscribe to YouTube. Yeah, that's basically mostly what we're trying to thrive for at that goal. And fuck it, if you do so, Bruce, you probably throw out some cash. Who the fuck knows? I did that last time we did Facebook, right? And Instagram. Other than that, though, I do appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for sipping up with us. Thank you for talking up with us. Thank you for kicking it.
G.
Yes, sir.
Have a good night, Corey.